Hello out there. It's Illuminostic. Thanks a lot for tuning into the live stream. I know I just did one a few days ago. I normally wouldn't do them so close together, but there's a lot to talk about, and I felt like I didn't really flesh out some of the stuff that we got into. And also I'm trying to figure out when, it's the best time for everybody. Okay, so I just want to mention a couple of plant medicine related topics for my own in my own healing journey lately. Uña de gato, or cat's claw, I think has been very efficacious at controlling infection and restoring the system to homeostasis. And it's actually been studied pretty extensively. And basically all of the indigenous claims about the healing properties of the plant have been substantiated. So you do have to be careful how long you take it and how much you take. But I think it's a good idea. You know, you never know if you have a tumor growing, for example, and it's been proven to shrink that. And kind of on the other side of the coin, I know a lot of you are plant medicine people, and you may come down to South America and chew coca. And it's good to keep in mind that they are spraying pesticides, basically. It's actually a fungus, but not pesticides, but herbicides to try to eradicate the coca. And I think it's a very good idea to make sure that you wash it thoroughly before you chew it. Okay, so whenever I have a ceremony, plant medicine ceremony that I'm facilitating, I almost always ask the medicine to shine the light, the things that we cannot see or that we refuse to look at. And I try to align myself with that in general. That's, how I like to, it's kind of a goal for me with, the YouTube channel and some of my other endeavors. The difficulty with that is that these blind spots are blind spots oftentimes for a reason. And so it's not always fun to be the person that is trying to find, relevant, productive input to give that's not being acknowledged, because a lot of times that's the result of maybe touchy subjects, or an idea may have bad associations. And so people are hesitant to process a lot of this information. And I'll give you guys a couple of examples. And I hesitant to talk about this because it gets me in a lot of trouble. But this is something I've kind of been actively experimenting with as well. You notice that people that support a certain politician will seem totally oblivious to certain things that politician does. And I think a lot of Democrats and liberals sort of associate that with, Trump supporters and conservatives. But I have on many occasions given people links to proven, not conspiracy theory, but, things that happen for certain that Barack Obama did. And oftentimes even looking at the other day, it was actually a FBI statistic. People will still call you a liar rather than process the information they've been confronted with. And I've noticed that people also tend to cling to two primary types of information: that which they think will keep them safe, and let's talk about that one for a second. COVID, of course, is a topic of a lot of conflict. And the particular instance that brought this to my attention, who waffled completely on a certain issue. And if you pointed that out to most people, they would kind of get outraged, rather than acknowledging that this original piece of information is now directly conflicted by this other piece of information from the same source. And so this is kind of what I'm getting at with the difficulty of presenting information to encourage a more holistic perception of whatever the issues are. I think our perception as human beings is sort of like Swiss cheese, and there are a lot of blind spots, and it matters because, as I'm always saying, you can't treat cancer with cold medicine. You have to be willing to make an objective diagnosis of the situation and really understand what you're dealing with in order to fix it. Another really interesting sort of connected concept to this I've been thinking a lot about lately that I think can really help us understand a lot of the craziness that we're looking at. I've been studying Forex, and I have to tell you a story before I get into the relevance of that. I had a street musician friend in San Francisco, and we used to play guitar on the street all the time. And one day we were talking about metaphysics. We didn't actually talk much, kind of a weird relationship. We wouldn't really speak. I would just walk up and set my guitar down. We would play. And then at the end of the night, go our separate ways. And on this one occasion, we started talking, and he told me that one time a while back, a friend of his had said, hey, we need to go see this guru. And my friend said, yeah, it's not really my thing. And the guy said, I'll pay for it. Just humor me. It's only an hour and a half of your time or whatever. So my friend said he went to go and check this guy out, and it took him forever to even walk in the room. And then instead of being some Indian, older guy with a big white beard and a robe, he said he was just some normal looking white guy. And he's like, what the hell? So the guy sits down at the desk and he starts just writing, and he doesn't acknowledge the people. He's just writing. And so 10 minutes goes by or so. And finally the guy looks up and he says, okay, I'll take your questions now. And so somebody raises their hand, he calls on them, and they're like, my wife cheated on me and my dog got run over and the IRS is after me and all this stuff. And the guy says, the problem is that there is only one thing doing one thing. You think that there are all these things. If you would just understand that there's just one thing doing one thing, you won't experience all this chaos anymore. And so at first, when I heard this, it just kind of sounded to me like the typical guru spiel about how everything is one. But if you pay attention to how he phrased it, one thing doing one thing, it is actually an extremely profound teaching, and it has a very pragmatic use, which is this. If you can predict a system, it implies that you understand the system. So this is how weather would be a good example of that. And the Forex market would be another example. And, I forgot a bit of that story. Supposedly, the guru was kicked out of the United States for teaching this. I have no way of substantiating that. He didn't tell me the guy's name or anything, but at any rate, it's worthy regardless of the, veracity of the tale. The Forex market, for example, you can see that it's governed by the same laws that everything else was. Like a holding pattern is like if a ball gets stuck between two boards with some velocity and finally it breaks, it mirrors the macro universe. And so this applies to political systems. It applies to all sorts of different systems, the psychological system of a human being. If you can understand the fundamental workings of the one thing doing the one thing, you can kind of understand any system. And this kind of helps when, if you're learning something and it gets like drudgery, just remind yourself that you're never just learning about one thing. This stuff is all going to be applicable to all other systems. And so part of what I'm getting at with that is that if you are able to accurately predict events within a government, it suggests that you understand the system. So I feel like I've been able to do that to an extent that has suggested certain things to me. And so I just want to make it clear, because there was some sort of negative response to the last video, because I think people want Trump out of office so badly that they just don't want to hear any criticism of Biden. And I want to make it really clear too, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from voting when I talk about this stuff. But it's disturbing to me the degree to which the exchange of information is being suppressed, again, based on those sort of deliberate holes, the Swiss cheese perception. And it's very difficult for a number of reasons. And so that kind of brings me to this subject of shining light where we refuse to see. I think that one of the major impediments to people's progress with consciousness is this sort of resistance to integrating knowledge of the darkness, or however you want to put it, the relationship between good and evil, the necessity of paradox. And so there's this focus on sort of blissing out with meditation, finding peace, and sort of avoiding contemplation of the sides of the coin that we perceive to be negative. And I think that creating this habit has a lot to do with the psychological disposition that we see, where people have these holes in their perception. So I'm just kind of suggesting that in our meditations, in our contemplations, in our studies of the universe, it is very important to process everything holistically. Understanding the shadow and its role is not aligning your being with it. It's just comprehension. And this is a practice that's going to just help with your clarity. Overall, I'm feeling really positive. This is something I was thinking a lot about today. There's a lot of fear, obviously, and we don't know with any, we're not sure about the outcome, but I really do feel like this is the moment that we have all been waiting for in terms of real, meaningful global change. The internet, the way that we're all connected now, the way that we can exchange information. Also, I'm always talking about empowering conscious people, the opportunities that are available to us because of this integration. It's unprecedented. So if you combine that with the fact that we have spiritual communities all over the world, psychedelic communities that are absolutely exploding right now, and that they are a little bit more evolved, I think, than the ones that came before us. If we really look at the histories, which, by the way, I really do advocate studying the history of the major players in the first psychedelic revolution in the United States in the 60s, there's some really strange, interesting circumstances that very strongly suggest to me some kind of consciousness sort of guiding and making sure this stuff happened. So definitely worthy to know our history. And also because we can see where a lot of the mistakes were made. I've known a lot of older, really disgruntled hippies that I wondered for a long time, why are they so jaded and cynical? Because they really felt like once they just communicated this experience of Gnosis or higher consciousness or however you want to talk about it to the rest of humanity, that there would be no more war. And, and when it didn't happen right away, they thought, well, certainly this will just spread, and within a few decades, and then it's this more of the same, more of the same, more of the same. But I don't think that they did fail. And I think, as I was talking before about how if you can understand one system, you understand all the other systems because they're one thing doing one thing. Before an earthquake, there is tremors. And I think that the 1960s and all that stuff that happened then were the tremors anticipating this much larger event. I have to be honest and say that my concerns are that the way that I understand the universe is that nothing is really guaranteed. And there are a lot of indications to me that there is maybe some kind of fascist New World Order type thing going down. And I'm not convinced of anything. I don't buy into every part of any of the narratives of the conspiracy theorists. But I think that some things that we relegate to the realm of conspiracy are actually just really obvious, and we're in denial about it. And this kind of goes back to that, somebody said it really brilliantly the other day, herd immunity to the truth, right? The way I was talking about how we censor each other when we're trying to bring up this stuff that people don't want to confront. While we're on the subject, I should mention that I think also, unfortunately, it's not always ignorance, and this makes our job a little bit more difficult. People know that they're basically good people, right? I think that it's true that most people, even if they're misguided, they want to do good, right? So I think that if a lot of people, particularly in the States, were confronted with the realities of how much would have to change in order to rid the world of these things that we wouldn't tolerate, they have to choose not to acknowledge them because they like their comfort, and you can't really blame them. But clearly we're at a tipping point where that's just no longer acceptable. I really do think we have to act. We have to act with conviction. We have to act with dedication. We have to act with clarity. And for myself, I'm really going all out, learning about, marketing. I'll find a tool that I can use in my meditations for other purposes, or that I can apply to my philosophical approaches. All of these things are just sort of sorry, I just want to see if there's any if you guys have any questions. Okay, so here's something. What the hell are we going to do about a cashless society? I've thought about that. And one of the things that I watched happen in the last few years was the destruction of the outlaw culture in Northern California, where I lived. You had people that were generations deep outlaws. They had never had a normal job, their grandparents. Really crazy, and there were also a lot of artists from all around the country that had kind of escaped to there to get away from regular society and have autonomy. And for a long time, it was a really beautiful thing. Humboldt County was founded by a bunch of hippies that, there's old videotape of them like building all the houses naked with their tool belts on. That's like all they're wearing, And when the pot started to get legalized all over the country and the price dropped, all of a sudden these outlaws all had no income. And it occurred to me, this is like one of the last places in America that you could escape to and really cut off all of your ties with mainstream culture without really hurting anyone. You're just growing pot. As far as like criminal enterprises go, that's arguably not really even criminal. I would say that, you almost have an obligation to break a law like that. So that's kind of the beginning, I guess, of my thinking about, it kind of seems like we're heading toward a cashless society, which brings me back to this. What I was saying about how, if you're able to predict systems, some of the things that have come out of the conspiracy theory camp have been consistently correct. a bit too much to just totally dismiss with laughter. That's what kills me about it. When I see some of the conspiracy theories that people present that are plausible and even likely, and people laugh just because it's in the realm of conspiracy, that blows my mind. I mean, it really does. So the cashless society, what are we going to do? I think that if you're talking about how would people get around it, I think they would. I knew of some people in Marin County in California that were actually printing their own gold currency, which I'm pretty sure is illegal. But, there's bartering and there's possibilities like that. I know there have been like rebel coin mints out there to, people that are anticipating this kind of stuff, that cash could disappear. Also, this guy talking about cryptocurrency. I mean, as I said in the last video, what I gather is that, everybody is on the same page that some major stuff is going to go down. And you can, if you're day trading or you're investing in Forex or crypto, you can also make money when things drop. And one of the reasons I chose this as something that I'm looking into is that I think that people that have opened up their consciousness, right? This idea that psychedelics bring down filters in the mind, and then you can, receive information that is usually more difficult to access. We will be able to intuit and see the patterns in, dynamic systems like a Forex market better than people that have not had these experiences. That's kind of my gut feeling. But another facet of this is that the influences that drive markets are changing so dramatically, and the way that people do business, the old guard that has money is not going to be as well equipped to manage it and handle it as the younger people. I read a really good blog the other day about this, and he was, of course, people that have money can hire the best people and they'll hire young people. But the gist of it was that not all of these old school elites or whatever will be able to adapt, right? Darwin's not actually survival of the fittest, it's survival of the most adaptable. So I'm just kind of offering that that's another place where we have some hope, that these massive shifts, these financial disruptions will actually displace some of the people that we need displaced. And hopefully there are a lot of other people like me thinking, conscious people really need to try to improve themselves financially so that they have the power to make an impact, to build each other up and also to influence markets. If people have a political problem with a certain country, what they're doing, if we were all hip to this, we could actually manipulate the markets to, like a citizen, what do they call it? When they shut down trade with, we have a lot more power than we realize. We just have to take a little bit of time to acquire some skill sets and make sure that we're among the super adaptable that can